This is Jody Denberg, and this is KUTX at home. And today we are at home with Adrian Quesada. We're going to make ourselves at home with Adrian, who these days the world knows as a member of Black Pumas. Those of us in Austin could tick off a lot of artists that he's been involved with or bands he's been in, including Grupo Fantasma, Brownout, Spanish Gold, Cote Soul Sounds, Money Chicha, Ecocentrics, Glorieta. You get the picture, and we get the picture of Adrian Quesada at home. But hey, man, it looks like you're in a studio.
I am in my studio, yeah, which is in my home. So it's a good place to be.
Does your studio have a name?
It does. Electric Deluxe Recorders.
So you're at home, and your wife Celeste is with you, and you have two daughters. Are they both at home as well?
They are, yeah. We're doing the online schooling. They are doing our best to try to adhere to the new kind of school system.
So when you're at home and you have these other people, you have a place that you can go and have your own space, which is your studio.
I do, yeah. It's nice. It's connected to the house. So there's, the plus to that is I can come in here and work at any time. I think that the downside is sometimes now that everybody's home, I'll be in here like pouring my heart out into a song and somebody just bursts in like, Dad, can you make me a sandwich? So there's ups and downs to all that, but it's great. It's great to have a place like a creative space at home.
It looks really cool. The last time I saw you, it was, I'm trying to remember, it was after the Grammys. I bumped into you and Eric Burton. You were at the station, I think, doing something for National Public Radio.
Yeah.
We didn't social distance because we weren't at that phase yet, but we didn't shake hands. We did a little elbow bump. Was it right after a European tour?
Yeah, we had just been back a couple of weeks from Europe, and that was actually, if I remember correctly, that was the day that everything took a hard left turn. That was Friday the 13th, I believe, of March, and I remember that was the week of like the Austin Music Awards, the Texas Film Awards, and I was out at a couple of those, and people were still were talking about it, but still not quite sure what was going on and what to make of it. Those were like, I think that day I saw you, that was like those couple of days were the days that people started to maybe kind of take it seriously, and then I think that day was the day that everything took a hard left turn. Do you remember that? Yeah, that was that Friday.
Yeah, that was my last night out. I went to see Chuck Prophet at the Continental Club, and that was the last live music that I saw.
Yeah.
And you were on this and are on this incredible roll following the European tour and the Grammy nomination. And then boom, everything just stops, right?
It does. Yeah. It was overnight. I mean, it was, we came back from that tour. We were in Europe a couple of weeks before that, and it was hitting Europe already. So there was talk of it for sure. And we were definitely aware of it. And I remember flying back and having to, when checking into my flight, having to check a box whether we had where we had traveled and whether we had been to China and whatever. But nobody was quite sure what was gonna. There's been so many scares in the past, like H1N1, SARS, Ebola, all that like almost sent us into a pandemic. But I think, but never quite got to that point. So I have a feeling. People weren't quite taking it seriously because it was like, oh, it's just going to be another one of those scares that goes away. But I remember like that was the day it pivoted. But yeah, just overnight, all of a sudden, we were supposed to be touring March, and touring all year, but like our March dates went away. And then I remember things just saying like, oh, things are getting pushed till April, and then now it's getting pushed till May. And now it's just like, who knows if there's going to be a concert anytime in the next 6 months. It's insane. It's so absolutely surreal.
And you had 4 nights sold out at Stubbs, a record-setting stand that no doubt we will get back to, but as you say, who knows when. The Black Pumas, your band with Eric Burton, were on this incredible trajectory, and then, you had to stop all of this promotional things, all the promotional things that you were doing. So personally, your own demeanor, did you freak out, or did you think, hey man, I'll go write some songs, I got a studio, I'll just shift gears?
I didn't quite freak out. I think I kind of did more of the I'm just going to shift gears. We've been gone so much the last year that I'm a homebody introvert, studio rat by nature, so I really missed being in the studio. But it's now I'm starting to realize, like, just to not take anything for granted, because I just missed that opportunity to be out there playing music, to have people coming to our shows, people buying our records, selling out shows all over the world was just an incredible thing. I mean, at first, honestly, when it first happened, I thought it would be like a 2-month pause. I was like, all right, well, things will be back to normal in 2 months, but I just don't know when, or like, but people are talking about the new normal. But I mean, I trying to make the most of it and trying to keep positive, creating and writing a lot. But, and I was telling Deidre earlier, like I have my day, and I'm existing in this new reality, really making the best of it and trying to stay positive. There's days where I definitely have kind of these panic attacks and kind of anxiety attacks. I try to just suppress them and stay positive and just, look at the bright side of all of it.
I'm with you, my friend. I experienced the same thing. I call it the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Because in the midst of panic, which comes upon me, then there's those silver lining moments, which for you would be, wow, I wouldn't be in the studio today if this hadn't happened. I just wrote a song that I think is great. So there's silver linings. And then, of course, all of our brothers and sisters who are suffering, and that's so troubling.
Mm-hmm.
Let me backtrack to something a little happier. The Grammy nomination, did you and Eric go to the Grammys?
We did, yeah. And we sat in the fourth row. It was pretty wild.
And you had won a Grammy back in 2011, Best Latin Rock Album with Grupo Fantasma. So you had a little experience. Did you attend that time?
I did not attend that time. We were nominated, I don't know if it was 2 years in a row or it was over the course of 2 albums. The first year that we were nominated, we didn't win, and I went that year. And then I was just kind of discouraged the second time we got nominated, and then they only offered the band 4 tickets. And of course that's a 10-piece band, so it was like, how do you, and then finally I was like, I don't even care, I don't want to go. So we were on tour. Actually, we toured up there to LA to the Grammys, and then that morning turned around or the day before drove back. We were on a tour bus coming back home, but we stopped and pulled over at a gas station to watch it at a truck stop. So I watched the Grammys when we won from a truck stop. And we tried to stream it, and the connection was really bad. So I was on the phone with my wife Celeste, and she was the one that we had like a delay, and we couldn't even get it to work. And she just was the one that told me, you guys won, and it was just a big celebration in a truck stop.
You have a Grammy somewhere there in your studio?
I don't. I have the certificate up there, which is kind of hard to see. I have a desktop, so I can't move it, but it's up here. Yeah, I have like a big certificate with a medal and all that.
Well, congratulations, not only for all the success, but for all the great music that's become part of the soundtrack to our lives. In Austin, I think we're a little bit more clued in. Now the rest of the world knows about your talents and the talents that you've combined with Eric for Black Pumas. I was looking at your Instagram page, and this is after one night I was watching This Is Us, this TV show, and the song Colors came on, and I was like to my wife, oh my God, that's Black Pumas. This is the biggest network television show going right now. They're being heard everywhere. And then I'm looking at your Instagram page, and when all these other guitar players were on there playing Black Pumas guitar parts. That blew my mind. How about you?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely insane. We get, almost daily now we have people covering, it's mainly Colors, I think, just because the song is so timeless itself, but people sending us videos all the time of, I've seen bands cover an entire song. I've seen multiple songs, but really there's a lot of songwriters that cover Colors. I literally think for a while there we were getting a daily video from people, a lot of really good ones. And people were covering other stuff and learning guitar parts. So much so that I can't remember who I was telling, but there was one person, I think it was some Brazilian singer, who did a cover of our song October 33 on guitar. And it stood out to me, and I watched it, and he was doing some really cool stuff on guitar that I actually copied back from him. So it's like this weird feedback loop where like somebody's stealing our song, and then I stole it back and showed the band. I was like, check out this thing he's doing on guitar. That's awesome. I'm stealing that. It's technically our song. So it's kind of funny, but I messaged the guy. I was like, hey, I love what you did on guitar. I would never thought of that, but now I'm playing it. It's become my part by way of my actions.
He must have loved that as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
You and Eric staying in touch during this downtime?
Yeah, I just spoke to him yesterday. He's actually in California. He's got family out there, so I think he was getting a little stir crazy in here. And he was like, if I'm gonna be, quarantined, he wants to be kind of close to family and girlfriend. So he was up there. I think he's up there all month. Yeah, we stay in touch, and we've been trading a bunch of ideas and demos, and just itching to get back into the studio. I mean, we've worked on a few ideas, but we can't really get the whole band in the studio, so we're just kind of waiting for that. Who knows? Things just seem to change, and everything's just so up in the air. But at some point, we'll be recording a full new record.
I mentioned at the top just some of the bands that you've either been in or been involved with. You're from Laredo, Texas?
That's right.
Is that where you met? I mean, the Grupo Fantasma, Brownout, Acote Soul Sounds, Money Chicha, a lot of what do I want to say, overlapping memberships. Was it in Laredo that you met a lot of the guys that are in some of these bands?
We actually met here. We went to a different high school. They were all at one high school, and they had like the cool band in Laredo. And I was in another band with some friends, and we had a lot of mutual friends. I used to go see them play in high school. They had a band called the Blimp Trio, and then it became the Blimp when in high school. And but they moved here. I moved in '95. They moved in '96, and we kind of connected in '96 when they moved here. So we weren't actually friends. We had the bass player in my band, who was like one of my oldest friends, was really good friends with them. So I always knew who they were, but they were like kind of too cool for me. So I was like a little intimidated.
There's so many sounds from all over the globe that enters into all of the music that you make. When you came to UT, you were playing with some bands that had like an Afro-Caribbean vibe. Is that the case?
Yeah, when I got to Austin, I actually was studying art, visual art. I have a degree in painting from UT, but I was getting a minor in music, and kind of fell into a whole circuit of musicians that were kind of ethnomusicologists, and there was a couple of ensembles, and they were like the reason that I reconnected with Latin music. And then also was when I was turned on to African music, all kinds of different variations of African music, like Afro-Peruvian music, Afro-Caribbean music, and then African pop music, which also led me into Afrobeat. And I had a professor who led a couple of ensembles when I was a freshman or a sophomore in college, and he kind of took me in, and I played in all his ensembles, and he kind of treated it more like a band, less like a recital college thing. Like we actually played gigs and rehearsed and hung out at a bar and drank beer. We used to go to Crown and Anchor after every rehearsal. So he treated it more like a band and less like an academic kind of, performance ensemble. So he would just make these mixtapes of music to turn me on to. And that's kind of what led me back into, African rhythms.
I think all of those experiences are somewhere in the Black Pumas, maybe a little subtler, but that's kind of the cool thing. I wanted to talk about another full circle moment. We mentioned one earlier. In 2018, you oversaw this record that I just love so much, Look at My Soul, the Latin Shades of Texas Soul. Tell me a little bit about that project and how Ruben Ramos was involved.
Yeah, that was an idea I'd had for, I don't know, almost 10 years. I'd been kind of putting it out to people, but there was a while there where I was really getting into the early music of Ruben Ramos, and like I'm gonna rewind all the way to the inception of the idea. When I was in Grupo, like one of our first few years, early 2000s, we did this interview with Ruben, and he was there as well. And he was talking about how when they were young, they actually grew up on rhythm and blues and rock and roll. And, he was like, they didn't start singing in Spanish until much later, and really kind of go back to their roots. And back then it always planted a seed of like, that was exactly the situation with me and the Grupo guys, was like, we grew up in on the border around Mexican music, but we were listening to rock and roll, hip hop, funk, whatever. We weren't really fully embracing the music that we grew up with until we got a little older. So I always made that connection. Then I started to collect a lot of the early records of like Ruben, Little Joe, Sonny and the Sunliners, and all of their like late 60s, early 70s records, and was really kind of digging the parallels between just seeing their progression as artists and comparing it to kind of like me and my friends who were from South Texas. But I always really dug their music, so I always thought it'd be kind of cool to reconnect the dots, like get me and my friends and connect with them. If at worse, I was like, if anything, it'll be some cool stories that come of it. But I pitched it to people for years, and nobody really bid on it. I feel like the last few years there was a little bit of a resurgence of people going back and embracing, particularly Sonny and the Sunliners. I feel like he had some music re-released, and the kind of like lowrider Chicano soul scene started to really fully embrace it. So I think people were finally paying attention, and I happened to be able to slip this idea in, and it kind of turned into this whole other thing, of course, like most projects do.
It's interesting because for me, I turned on to Sonny and Ruben and Little Joe through Doug Somm,
Mm-hmm.
who was
Exactly.
a rock and roller
Yeah.
with his roots. So any way we can get to this music, it's a beautiful thing. You've never been confined by genre, by style. I was looking at the list of some of the people that you've worked with. I know you did a little something with Deer Tick. What was your connection with Daniel Johnston?
Met Daniel back through Tom Gimbel. So years ago, we backed Daniel when I was in Grupo Fantasma randomly. Like he needed a band for some South by Southwest performances, so we backed him on one or two shows, I can't remember. And then eventually, Tom asked me to produce the Space Duck soundtrack, which was a comic book that Daniel was writing and releasing as an app, and releasing a soundtrack with it. So that soundtrack was actually a bunch of people doing songs. I can't remember if they were all doing Daniel songs or like sort of tributes to Daniel, and then about 5 or 6 Daniel tunes. So I produced that EP, and then subsequently we backed him a couple of times. So I got to work with him on that, which is I think that record kind of got overlooked. I think that's one of my favorite things I've ever worked on.
I loved seeing you on stage with Los Lobos when they were inducted into the Austin City Limits Hall of Fame. Wild Child, Carl Denson, Alex Moss of the Black Angels, Third Root, David Garza. These are all folks that you've worked with. And again, I think it all informs Black Pumas in this subtle way. And I think that's what one of the things people respond to is just the depth of Black Pumas. But then there's a visceral thing that you don't have to get academic about it. It's just there and you groove to it. You were talking about Grupo. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about your relationship with Prince. After Prince passed away, I saw the Prince tribute at Antone's, and you were up there and playing Prince music. But first of all, you were also playing Santana music, and I was going, well, how does Santana fit into Grupo and Prince? So maybe you can walk me through a little bit of that.
The Night of the Prince thing at Antone's, you mean?
Yeah.
So that was actually something that Prince, that was a medley that he taught us. He was a huge Santana fan. So we backed him. I think that came from we played a TV show. We backed him on a TV show called the Alma Awards in LA. And it was a huge band. It was like it was all of our band and almost all of his band, and Sheila E., Prince. And we did this huge, I don't know, like 12, 13-minute medley of songs. And I think that came from there. I just remember at one rehearsal, we were rehearsing something, and he showed us this whole like Santana tribute that he had, and that was it. So it's kind of one of those things. Maybe we should have told people at Antone's where that all fit in, but maybe you can shine some light on that. But yeah, that actually came directly from him.
That was such a magical night at Antone's, and to have players up there, including yourself, who had worked with Prince. Your relationship with him started when the band Grupo did a short residency at his club in Vegas. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, he used to have a club at the 31. I mean, the club was called 3121. It was at the Rio Hotel, and he curated the music there. So like Wednesday night I think it was like an old school night, and he'd have like Dougie Fresh or like old school hip hop and funk, performance. Thursday night was a Latin night, and then he performed Friday and Saturday. Thursday night, he had a house band, and that house band, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think they didn't want to play Thanksgiving. So he had already heard our record and liked it. So they invited us to cover for them for Thanksgiving. We went and played, looked for him, and we hung out in the green room afterwards, and thinking he'd come talk to us. He never did. But we flew home the next morning and thought, well, that was that. If that was, my Prince story for life, that's pretty awesome. I got to play at his club in Vegas. But by the time we got home, he had fired the other band and made us his house band. So I remember getting home for Thanksgiving, getting off the plane and having a call from our manager, like, yeah, he wants you guys to be the house band. He fired the other band. So we started going up every Thursday and eventually formed a relationship with him.
So he got up and played with your band, Grupo. in that sense, he could not be dictating the terms because he was sitting in. But in your collaborations with him, I guess it was both him being a leader and then him being part of what was happening as a group member.
Yeah, we did a couple of gigs where he just sat in with us the entire gig. And I mean, the first time we really, I mean, he would sit in for a song, you know, every once in a while. But like the first time we actually backed him, we didn't know what we were doing. It was at the Golden Globes. He had an after party for the Golden Globes. We had like got the notice that day, I think, and flew up that day, got there. Didn't really know what we were doing. We actually thought we were opening for him. So we got to it was like at a hotel room in Hollywood, and all the gear was set up. So thought we were opening, and like his crew was there. Nobody really knew what was going on, but they're like, the band's not here. I think it's just you guys. So we didn't know what was happening. He showed up and we were like, well, what do we do? And he said, just play your music. I'll just play with y'all. So we played a whole show. The first time we played a whole show with him, he sat in on our set the entire show. And we ended up doing a lot of covers, a lot of James Brown and stuff, but we didn't have any Prince songs in our repertoire, but like one or two. But he actually wanted to just play with us.
So does video or audio exist of your working with Prince in those days?
The best video that I think a lot of it was taken down, you know, a lot of it gets taken down, but the Alma Awards performance is up there on YouTube. After he passed, some videos finally went back up, but that whole performance is pretty epic. It's out there. It's like if you Google Prince, Grupo Fantasma, Sheila E., Alma Awards, some combination of that, it should come up.
You know, I get the feeling when all is said and done, we know Prince was a genius, but he just kind of seemed like a nice guy. Is that a simplification?
Yeah, you know, he really was to us. I don't know, you know, we would kind of like cross paths and were in his orbit, but weren't there all the time. You know, like his band was on salary and with him often, and it might have been a little bit harder to be in that position for us. You know, we were kind of an exciting new thing for him, and I mean, we were just honored to just be in the conversation. So it was really nice to us always. He was always really, really cool with us. I mean, I think he there was times where he would lay down the law in rehearsals, you know, but he always set the tone. You knew when it was when he was in a good mood, and you knew, and when he was in a bad mood, it was just all business that day. Like it was fine, you know, for us. If it was all business all the time, we were learning no matter what. So, you know.
So many great memories. And the cool thing is that you're going to be making all sorts of great memories here in the future. I truly believe that. And I think you'll be able to pick up where you left off when everybody gets out to play again. And because there's a hunger for the music of the Black Pumas. I remember when we got the first song, Black Moon Rising, then there was a little bit of a break before the album came out. Were you like thinking, man, this first song is being received so well, we need to make sure that everything is up to that level? What accounted for that break in between the first song and the album?
Finalizing the album was the hardest thing. Like we kept adding one more song and then one more song, and the band was developing. It was a lot of just coordinating the release and label stuff, and you know, finalizing all that. That kind of added a lot to you know, making sure that we got that right, because you can only release your debut album one time, you know. So it was figuring out label stuff kind of took a while, but we were adding songs up until the last minute. I mean, we had more than enough songs, you know, but it was like just kind of adding. The bulk of it was done, and we honestly didn't feel like a ton of pressure back then. We were things just took long, you know. It was just a lot of back and forth with labels and et cetera, et cetera.
Do you feel any pressure now when you start to sit down and work on songs for the next record?
The pressure I feel, it's funny because Eric and I talk about that a lot, is like, I think it's pressure that we're putting on ourselves. To be totally honest, I think because the whole thing happened with such like, I don't know, we just didn't have we had no pressure. We were doing it completely for fun. You know, we didn't know what we were going to do with it. I mean, the music a lot of it was done in 2018. We weren't even a band. We didn't become a band until the end of 2018. And it was like, just to hear those songs live, we said, let's just play for fun. So I think because the beginnings and the original like objective of the band was so pure and you know, sincere, like we just wanted something to listen to for ourselves, that we kind of still have that mentality, but we do feel like we didn't really know each other back then. We hadn't really ever worked together, and now we know our strengths and weaknesses, and now we're putting pressure on ourselves. But as far as like kind of pressure from the outside world, to be totally honest, not really, because we ultimately would be doing it to something new for us to listen to anyways.
You've always followed your muse in any musical project that you've done, and I think that's why music lovers respond to it. I was lucky enough to host Black Pumas in Studio 1A. There we were with like 70 people. What a privilege that was. But I look forward to when things reopen and you guys will pick up your 4-night sold out stand at Stubbs, and we'll have that communal feeling of everybody who has loved this record and love you guys as artists, to watch you again on the stage. I know it'll happen. You don't know when, I don't know when, but it's gonna happen, my friend.
I know it will soon. I know we're dying to get back out there for sure.
So what's the rest of your day like? You're in your home studio. What do you think you'll do today?
I'm actually working on some songs right now. I think I'll be adjusting, trying to figure out this light that I put up here. Peter and I were talking about lighting, and I was like, "Yeah, I just saw this video about how you're supposed to light yourself on Zoom." So I threw up a light, like you literally at the last minute. You guys were like, "It's 12:59," so I threw up a light, and I'm just like, "Oh my god, it seems like an interrogation here." I'll be figuring that out because we're using Zoom quite a bit. I'm trying to like find the angle here where it's not like super awkward. But in all seriousness, I'm working on some songs here in the studio, working on some instrumental music, a bunch of little odds and ends. Pumas will be releasing a new live video pretty soon, so it's kind of finalizing a mix on that. And you know, my days are spent in here, but also really haven't been around a lot the last year, so catching up on a lot of family time. You know, so I work half a day ish to a day, and then just kind of spend time with the family here.
Well, Adrian, it's such a pleasure to be part of the same community with you, the Austin music community, and with your wife, Celeste, who I've had the pleasure of working with on the Austin Music Awards and other things. So I want you guys to please stay healthy and stay well and give my best to your daughters. Thanks for spending time with us today. And whatever you do, we'll be listening because
Hey,
it's
thanks,
all,
Jody, and likewise.
all right.
Good to see
Have,
you.
have a good one, Adrian
All right, you
Quesada.
too.
Peace, brother.